Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be continuing on with our American Girl series, and this doll is from the 1700s. It's Felicity. This doll is a lot of people's favorite, and these recipes are from the colonial era, so Felicity is from colonial Williamsburg, and so for this one we're going to be making sweet potatoes and apples. Now, I purchased my Felicity doll as an adult, and I love her so much, and follow along as we make the recipe. I'll tell a couple stories as we go along, but here we go. So your first step is going to be to take some washed sweet potatoes and poke them with a fork and roast them, and so it's pretty basic. Baking them at about 350 for an hour until a fork slides into them easily. So one of the stranger things about this recipe is that it tells you to cut the apple first and then peel it. And so if I were following this recipe, I would definitely peel the apple first and then cut it up, because it ended up being a little bit awkward trying to peel the apple after you've already cut up the pieces. But I'm wondering if that might be a historical thing, or not 100% sure. But I'm trying to stick with historical accuracy here a little bit as well, and so I'm not using a peeler for this because obviously during the time period of Felicity they would not have had peelers, and so I'm going to peel the apples with a knife. So that gets to be a little bit fun. So if you're making this along with kids, I would definitely not have them peel this with a knife. I would have them use a peeler, just because it's a lot safer and it has some protections in place. And even if they are using a peeler, I would stay right on top of them because it can be unsafe. But this would be a good opportunity to show kids how they had to peel things before they had peelers. And so that might be something to show. Also, if you have one of those apple peeler things that peels them automatically, that you have the hand crank for, that would be kind of fun to use for this as well, just because it's a cool gadgety thing that you could show them. Because those actually, I don't know if they were around during colonial times, but they are definitely an older style of thing. But you're just going to go through and peel all your apples. So after you're done peeling your apples, that's when you're going to slice things. And the really cool part about this is you can use a table knife, which means this is a point where your kids can actually help out. And you want pretty thin slices for this, because you are going to be layering this up, kind of like a lasagna. And tuck your fingers under, but this is a cool way to teach your kids knife skills so that they can learn how to properly use a knife without much risk. So it's a great way to practice these things just without messing things up. But if you're not working with kids, just use a regular knife. It goes a lot faster. So as we continue to slice the apples, I'm just going to share a couple of things that I love about the books and about reading about Felicity. So one of the things that I learned from reading the books when I was younger was Felicity taught me how to stand up for myself when I needed to, but also how to do that without being mean or without being unmannerly, because when she was not drinking tea and in Miss Manderly's classes, and she learned how to say thank you, I shall take no tea, and just turn her cups upside down, she figured out a way to take a stand and stand up for what she believed in without making herself stand out too much, but also while still fitting into the system. And in a lot of cases, that's something that's really important to learn, especially as a girl, especially as a woman. And it's something that was really an important lesson for Felicity to learn. And I think that's something that a lot of us loved about American Girl books growing up, is that these books never taught us that we had to sit back and let bad things happen, that there were ways that we, even as kids, could just make things better for ourselves, for our families, for our friends. And so I think that's part of the reason why so many of us connected with these stories. So if you have kids, or if you have kids in your life, find the old books. Find the ones that we read when we were younger, because these stories are so important for teaching kids ways to really, really work on making the world a better place. So you're going to work on peeling the sweet potatoes and slicing them. And to peel them, you're just peeling off all of the skin with your hands. You may need occasionally to get underneath the skin with a knife. And honestly, just a regular table knife will work for that just fine. And just make sure you get all of the brown parts off of the potato as you go. And then you are going to be slicing up the sweet potato into slices, and then just set those aside. And this can be done with a table knife as well, so it's a great way to get your kids involved into this process. And it does get very mushy, so do the best you can with trying to keep it together, but it's not the end of the world if it kind of mushes apart. And just set that into a bowl and keep on going through with the rest of your sweet potatoes. When you have sliced up all your sweet potatoes and apples, you're going to grease a casserole dish. And I tried to find one that looked a little more period correct, but this was about the best I could do. The recipe book says that you can use shortening for this, but I chose to use butter because it was a little more correct for the colonial period. And you're going to use about 2 tablespoons and just really rub it around into the dish. So then you're going to gather together your sweet potatoes and your apples and some maple syrup, and you want to use real maple syrup and not the fake kind, because obviously they wouldn't have had fake maple syrup like this, because that's corn syrup based. But you're going to just layer up your slices. So layer your sweet potatoes on the bottom and make it as an even layer as you possibly can. You're going to be doing a layer of sweet potatoes, a layer of apples, a layer of sweet potatoes, and a layer of apples. So you want to use about half your sweet potatoes in the first layer, so like 2.5 of your sweet potatoes. And just make it work as best you can. They're going to be kind of messy and funky in this particular case. And one thing that's kind of interesting about this is that there is no actual spices in this, and there's the sugar in it is maple sugar or maple syrup, because they would not have had access to a ton of spices due to the fact that there weren't a ton of them available in the colonies at that point in time, and they would have been pretty expensive. And so like we would have an inclination to add something like cinnamon or those types of things into it, but those would have been saved for a special occasion. So this is probably more of an everyday type dish. And so we're not adding those into this particular dish. And then the maple syrup would have been more of an everyday type thing. They're not using regular sugar. Regular sugar would have come in cones wrapped in blue paper. They might have had access to brown sugar, but the maple syrup would have been more of their everyday type sugar. But you're just going to keep on layering on those apples and keep those spread out and even as much as you possibly can. And once you have that layer on there, I pressed it down just a little bit just to make sure that everything was even, and then just layer on the rest of your sweet potatoes and apples. So you're going to take your maple syrup and pour it over top as evenly as you can. And it is a lot of maple syrup. I was kind of surprised by the amount that is going in here. And get it all over top. And one thing that I did for this recipe was that I covered it with a glass lid just so that everything didn't evaporate out. You just bake it at 350 for about 20 to 30 minutes, and it comes out looking absolutely amazing. One thing that my husband and I did when we ate this was we added a little bit of cinnamon on top just because that was our preference, but we did try it before we added the cinnamon, and it tasted absolutely amazing just on its own. And so I recommend, just for historical accuracy reasons and just so that you know what things taste like, always try them in the way that they were originally written so that you understand what people were eating at the time that these recipes were made. I always like to see what the original intent of a recipe is before I start messing around with things. This is probably a recipe that I'll try again just because it was very comforting, it was very warm, it was very filling. It was just a really nice recipe for fall, and it's a great way to use up produce. It's a great way to use local things, so I would say try it out. Let us know what you think. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back with more recipes. Thank you so much for joining us on Mixing with Mercs.